So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a right-click menu. A right-click menu is also called a context menu. So here's an example. Here there's a label on this window that says right-click on me. So this is a TTK label. When I right-click on it, I get a couple of menus here. So when you click on print hello, it prints hello down in the console. And when you right-click and click on exit application, it exits the application. I'm also going to show you how to change the text of the right-click menus. So we can change exit application to something else. And I'll also show you how to hide the menus in the context menu.
Hi, my name is Jobin, and I'm an open source developer. My channel is called JobinPy, and it's all about Python and Linux. Welcome to JobinPy.
Okay, so to get started, I'm going to import Tkinter as TK, and then from Tkinter import TTK because I'm going to use a TTK label. And I'm going to create the window in an object-oriented way. So I'm going to say class main window, and it's going to derive from tk.tk. And here we're going to create the constructor. And we're just going to use super to initialize tk.tk. And we're going to write main window equal main window. So we're instantiating this class now. And we're going to run main window dot main loop. Okay, so let's just run this to see what we get. We get an empty window, which is perfect. So the next thing I'll do is in the init constructor, I'm going to write self.geometry 640 by 480. I just want to make the window a little bit bigger. Here, when we refer to self, we're referring to main window, which is our root window. Okay, so if I run this, yep, so it's a bigger window now, so that's great. Okay, so the next thing that we'll do is we have to create the actual menu. So I'm going to put self.context menu equal tk.menu. And we want this menu to be part of our window. So I'm going to pass in self as the parent of this menu. Then I'm going to put Tearoff equal 0. And I'll explain what Tearoff equal 0 does later on in this video. So tk.menu is actually creating an invisible menu. It's not actually a menu that you can see. This is what we have to start with to add other menus into this menu. So you can think of this as the menu bar in a way. But the user's not going to see a menu bar in this case anyway, because this is just going to be a right-click menu. So remember, context menu is the same as a right-click menu. Then I'm going to create a method called create command menus, like that. And what is this method going to do? It's going to add menus to our context menu. So the first menu we're going to add is the print hello right-click menu. So here I'm going to write self.context menu, which is in reference to what we created up here, .add command. Then we pass in the label, which is essentially the text that we would like to see in this menu. So I'm going to put print hello and the command that we would like to run, or the method that we would like to run when the menu is clicked. And we're going to create that method now. So I'm going to put in on print hello menu clicked and pass in self because it's part of a class. And for the description here, I'm going to put the print hello menu has been clicked by the user. Therefore, we should print hello to the screen. So here I'm going to write print hello like that. And going back to our method here, create command menus, I'm going to add in the method name. So self dot on print hello menu clicked. And make sure you don't put parentheses like this because that'll actually run this method. So we want to make sure that we just pass in the name like that. Okay, so the other thing that we'll need to add is we'll need to create a label, because right now if we run our application, it's still an empty window. So I want to create a label in the middle of this window. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to create another method. I'm going to call it create label. And this is going to return a ttk.label. And the description is create a label that the user can right click on. Okay, so here I'm going to write self.label lbl right click equal ttk.label, and we're going to add this into our own window, the same window that we're on. So self text equal right click on me like that, and we're going to return the label itself. Okay, and then from here we're going to run this method, and when we run it, it's going to return a label, so we can use that to pack this label onto the screen. So we can say self.create label, so we run it .pack, and if I don't use expand equal true, it's not going to appear in the middle. So if I run it, you'll see that it's at the top. But if I add in expand equal true and run it again, it'll appear in the middle. So I want it to appear in the middle like this. Okay, so if I right click on this label, nothing happens yet because I haven't added any code for anything to happen when you right click on the label. So we should do that now. Okay, so here, after we actually create our context menu, I'm going to add in self.lbl right click .bind, and we're going to bind to button 3, which in my case is the right mouse button on my mouse. And when the right mouse button has been clicked on this label, I wanted to run a specific method. And I haven't created that method yet, so we should do that now. Show right click menu. Like that, and we'll pass in self because it's part of the class. And for a description, I'm going to write show the right click context menu. And it's actually going to pass in an event here as well. So we'll actually need to do something with this event. So running the bind method here on this right click menu, it's going to send an event here, which is basically going to have the X and Y coordinates of the mouse pointer. Okay, so to actually show the right click menu, we write self.contextMenu, which is in reference to our menu at the top here, dot tk underscore popup, and we add event.x root, event.y root. And I'll explain what this does here, but event is basically coming from here where it says show right click menu. So in the binding here, we pass in the method that we would like to run when the right mouse button is clicked on the mouse. So I'm going to add in self.show right click menu. And again, I'm not going to put in parentheses here. I'm just going to pass in the name by itself. Okay, so let's just run this and see if it works. Okay, so we have our label here, and if I right click on it, it kind of works. I can see a very, very small dot appear here, so something's definitely wrong. So I'm just going to check to see what I'm missing. So one thing I forgot to do is I forgot to run this method. So I created it, but I haven't actually called this line yet, or I haven't called this method yet. So create command menus. So the menu that says print hello, using the add command method, it hasn't actually executed. So it's called create command menus, and up in our constructor, I'm going to call it right after we create our right click menu. So here I'm going to write self dot create command menus. So now we're calling it. Let's try that again. Okay, we have our label. When we right click on it, there it is. So we see print hello. When we click on print hello, it outputs hello in the console. So it's definitely working. Okay, so let's just do a quick overview and see what's happening here. So we're creating our invisible menu bar. So context menu called tk.menu. And the menus are not TTK widgets. They're regular TK widgets. And I'm going to explain what Tearoff does later on. But self, we're passing the window as the root for this menu, for this invisible menu bar. Then in that invisible menu bar, we're creating commands. Okay, so far we have print hello, and that's working. Then here we're binding the right click button on the mouse to the label, so that when the label is right clicked on, it will run this method, show right click menu. And what does that method do? Well, that method takes that invisible menu bar and it runs this method on it, tk_popup, which essentially causes the right click menu to appear. And where that right click menu appears all depends on what we pass in here. So event.xroot is where the mouse pointer is currently when I right click on it. But you might think, well, why can't we just use X and Y? Why do we have to put X_root and Y_root? Well, right now, the way it is, it works fine. If I right click, it shows up exactly where my mouse pointer is. Watch what happens if I use just X and just Y. Okay, so we have that. And if I right click on it again, oh, you may not actually see it. It's appearing. I'm going to bring this down lower so you can see it. So notice on the top left-hand side of the screen, you can kind of see a partial part of a menu appear. It's getting cut off from the screen recorder, but you might be able to see a little bit of it. That's what happens. But when you use X root and Y root, that is in reference to the position and relevance to the position of the window and your mouse pointer. So in other words, if you use just X and just Y, that's the X and Y of where your mouse is relative to your actual whole screen. But if you put X_root and Y_root, that shows where that gives us the coordinates of your mouse pointer relative to the window that you're on. And that's why this works the way that we're expecting and the other one doesn't. So yeah, so in this case, you want to use X_root and Y_root. Okay, so now that we have print hello, we should add the other menu, which is exit application. Okay, so we should create that now. Okay, so down here in this method that says create command menus, we need to add another menu. So I'm going to put in self.contextMenu.add command, label equal exit application, command equal, well, we haven't created a method to exit the application, but we should do that now. So on exit application menu clicked, and the description here is we're going to exit the program. Okay, and to exit the program, we're going to use self.destroy. So this is essentially the same as using root.destroy when you're typically not using an object-oriented method like this. Okay, so here I'm going to add in for the command self.onExit application menu clicked. And that should be it. Let's just run that to make sure it works. Yeah, we have print hello, and if I click on exit application, it exits the program. But what if I want to do more with the right-click menu? What if I wanted to change exit application to exit app? Maybe application is too long and I just want to make it shorter. I just want to make it exit app. Well, I could just go in here and just change it and it'll work. But what if I want to change it while my program is running during runtime? How do I change a menu's label to show something else? Well, to do that, I'm going to add the code for changing the labels in the same method that we're creating them in. So in this method, create command menus, how do we reference this menu, the one that says exit application? I want to change it to exit app, like this. So to change that menu, I first need to find the index of that menu. And the index is a numeric value starting with number 0. And then for the next menu would be index 1. So in other words, print hello is at index 0 and exit application is at index 1. But what if I didn't know that when my program is running? How do I find out what the index is? So I can write down menu index equal self.context menu dot index. And when I use index, I can pass in the label of the menu that I'm looking for an index for. So here I'm going to pass in exit application. And I'm going to print that index so we can see it down in the console. It should be 1. And it is. And it's giving us 1 because exit application is the second menu. Print hello is 0 and exit application is 1. Okay, so it found the index that we're looking for. What if both of these were exit application? What would happen? Well, let me show you. If print hello's label was also exit application, so if we have two menus with the same label, it's going to return the first one that it finds. So you can see it returned 0 now because both of them have the same label. But if they're different, it's going to work fine in this case. Okay, so now that we know what the index is for the menu that we want to change the label for, how do we actually change the label? So I'm going to remove this print line because we already know that the index part works. Then I'm going to put self.contextMenu.entry config. I'm going to pass in the index for the menu that we want to change the label for. So in this case, menu index. And I'm going to put in label equal exit app, like that. Okay, so let's just run that and see if it works. Yep, it works. It says exit app. So that's how you change the label of a menu during runtime. So I'm going to remove that line here. I want to show you something else in relation to a menu's index. What if I wanted to find out what the index is of the very last menu in my right-click menu? So right now, I know that my last menu is exit application. What if I don't necessarily know how many items I'm going to have in my right-click menu. Maybe the menus are getting added dynamically by the user. And I want to know what the very, very last index number is. So to find out what the last index number is for your right-click menu, we can use a line similar to this, but instead of passing in the label, we can just use tk.end like that. And if I print this to the screen, let's see if it works. So self.contextMenu.index and pass in tk.end. And if I run it, we can see it gives us an index of 1. So that definitely works. What if I wanted to hide a menu? So right now, if I right click, I have print hello and exit application. What if I want to remove exit application from this right click menu? How do I do that? Well, to do that, we use a line like this: self.contextMenu.delete exit application. Okay, so if I run this again, I don't see exit application there anymore because it's been deleted. So to re-add that menu back in again, you would have to essentially create that menu again, either using add command, or if you wanted to add it to the end, you would use another method called insert command. And by using insert command instead of this, you can tell it at which index you would like to add that command to. Okay, so this is how you delete a menu, just using the delete method and then passing in the label of the menu. You could also pass in the index as well. So if I put in delete and then 1, it deleted exit application. So that also works. If I put in delete 0, it should remove print hello. So let's just try that. Yep. And now we're just left with exit application. What if I wanted to print out the labels of all the right-click menus in my menu? So I'm just going to remove that delete line. So what if I wanted to, for example, print to the console, the name of this menu, print hello, and the name of this menu, exit application. I just want to know what the labels of all the right-click menus are in my right-click menu. How would I do that? So to do that, I would have to use a for loop like this: for index or idx in range self.contextMenu.index, and the index that we're interested in is tk.end, which will be the very last index. And so this will go from 0 to the maximum index, but it's not going to include the maximum index. It's going to stop at the maximum index. So that's why here we have to add +1. So that's going to loop through all the indexes of the menus in this context menu. Then we can get the labels of the menus. So here I'm going to put in menu label equal self.contextMenu.entry cget, and then I pass in the index that I'm interested in, so idx, and what I'm actually interested in getting. So in this case, I'm interested in getting the label of this menu item at this index. And I'm going to print that menu label in the console so we can see it. Okay, so let's just make sure this works. And it does. So we can see print hello and exit application in the console. Okay, so now we have the labels of our menus. But you have to be careful with this, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Let's say I'm just going to comment this out for a minute so it doesn't print it to the console. Let's say after print hello, I want to add a separator So I'm just going to do that now. Self.contextMenu.add separator, like that. So that means after print hello, there's going to be a separator and then exit application. So when I look at the menu, it looks like this now. Okay, so there's just a separator here. Then I'm going to uncomment this line so I can get the label of all the menus in my right-click menu again. Watch what happens. It gives me an error. It says TCL error unknown option label. So why is it giving us that error? So the reason for the error is because the separator doesn't have a label. So when we're trying to get the label of all the menus in our right-click menu, it's getting to the separator and it's saying, oh, well, the separator doesn't have a label, so I'm just going to raise an exception. So how do we prevent this from happening? Where we still want to get the label of all our right-click menus, but only if they have a label. So to get around this, we have to detect what type of menu it is and only get the label if it's the type of menu that we're looking for. So here in this for loop, we can actually type this in. We can say menu type, variable equal self.contextMenu.type. So we use the type method and we pass in the index that we're interested in. And this will return a string and it'll tell us what type of menu it is. So here we can say print menu type. And then we'll see what type of string it'll output or what the string will contain. So I'm going to comment this out because it's going to show an error right now if I try to change the label on a separator. So I just want to print this out and see what it outputs to the console down here. Okay, so here it says we have a command, which we do. The label for that command is print hello. Then we have a separator, and then we have another command. So we can use this, and the only one we're really interested in is command. So here we can say if menu type is equal to command. Let's just remove that print statement. So if it's equal to a command, we want to run this. Okay, so I'm just going to run this and see what we get. And there we go. So now we don't get that error or that exception anymore because we're only looking for commands. So the last thing I'm going to show you is what the Tearoff option does up here in the constructor. So remember how we had self.contextMenu equal tk.menu, and then there's an option here that says Tearoff equals 0. Well, now I'm going to change that to Tearoff equal 1, and I'll show you what it does. So if I run this now, and if I right click on the label, I'll get these dashed lines above the context menu. And what that does is when you double click on the dashed lines, it creates a separate window with our right click menu. So to avoid this from coming up, you just set it to Tearoff equals 0, which will turn off that option. But if you do leave it on, it's going to show dashed lines like this, and your users will be able to double click and have a separate floating window, which is a unique feature. It's not commonly used from what I've seen. Another thing I should mention is the right-click binding. You know how we put in button -3? That's for the right mouse button. It's not always button -3. For Mac OS, it's most likely button -2 for the right-click button on the mouse. But since I don't have an Apple computer, I can't actually test it out. But you might want to just keep that in mind. So button 3 does work in Linux at least, and most likely Windows as well. But for Mac OS, it most likely is not button 3, it's most likely button 2. But you might want to try it out if you're using Mac OS. So that basically concludes how to create a right-click menu or a context menu with Tkinter. I hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching.